Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, a New York City building and code consulting firm. Today, I have the pleasure of having an old friend, Matthew Jaworski of Brend Restoration here. Matthew, pleasure to have you.
Good to see you.
Wow, it's been a long time.
It has.
So, show always starts to talk about relationships and the power of people. Went to lunch in the neighborhood here in Williamsburg, and sitting next to me was you. And we started to chat, and you congratulated me on the podcast and said that you're an avid listener. And I said, well, perfect. We need you to come on the show. So here you are. Just to give a little history, Matthew and I go back probably 20-something years. He's done some restoration work here at our main office. We actually developed the building, and he did some of the construction there, if not most of it. And we developed a relationship. And I have to say that one of the greatest compliments that I always give Matthew is that every project we've ever worked on together, the amount of energy that his firm puts into detailing and understanding waterproofing, masonry, roofing is just incredible. So kudos to you, because I have a lot of respect for the way your firm does their work. So you're on the show today to give us a little bit about, there's a lot going on with facades and sheds and parapets. So tell us a little bit about, I know you're involved in a lot of organizations that are here, and you acted as president on some of these organizations. Tell us a little bit of what's going on, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty.
So Brend Restoration first. Brend Restoration is a facade restoration company, although we do building envelope. Most of our work is related to facade inspection safety program, local law 10, local law 11 facade safety program.
Which is also known as FISP.
FISP. Facade inspection safety program.
That's a tough word for me.
which is currently undergoing certain changes in cycle 11. We've been in business for almost 40 years. We are approved by many manufacturers. We specialize in terracotta replacement, brickwork. I'm a licensed rigger. I'm a licensed site safety manager. So everything is in-house from soup to nuts. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So you bring up a good, a really great point. Unfortunately, first of all, the show is always we're big proponents about laws, right? We believe that laws are implemented to protect people that could be on the street. They're there to protect you and your workers while you're doing the work, all the safety requirements for rigging and scaffolding and sheds and all of that. So when the city enacts these laws, a lot of times it's because of a tragedy. And unfortunately, I hate to start a show about a tragedy, but a dear friend of ours who worked for Zabatkin, Erica Tishman, unfortunately was on her way to work, and a brick fell from a building, a piece of the facade fell off, and unfortunately she lost her life. And since then, the city, then after a tragedy, it reacts. But it's been reacting a long time. So take us a little bit about post Erica, what changed, but then there was unfortunately another start of this before her. So tell us a little bit about where local law 10 and 11 has evolved and where we are now.
So people say that the building code was written in blood. And to a large degree, a fatality or a major incident is what triggers the changes in law. First such incident was in 1979. A Barnard student was walking down the street. Her name was Grace Gold, and she was killed by a piece of falling facade. Subsequent to this event, a law was implemented called Local Law 10 of 1980, which was the first law in the United States which mandated the inspection of the building facades for safety. So at the time, the law limited the inspections to just the street facades, whatever was over the sidewalk. This would require the building owner to hire the architect or an engineer, and every 5 years, inspect the facade for safety.
Yeah.
So that there was.
I want to jump in for a second there, because I want the audience to just process what you just said for a minute. The first time in the country in 1980, that means that buildings were built in New York City forever, right?
Yeah.
Big buildings, Empire State Building. You go down the list, the Chrysler Building, even just this in the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s with a major boom, there were no requirements for a facade. It's mind-boggling that that's not that long ago. 1980, it was just a free-for-all. No one really had to invest money to take care of their facade. And since then, it's evolved much longer.
Tremendously.
But if you really think about that start date, that's pretty scary.
So hindsight's always 2020, right? And so even at the time when they established the law, there was a little bit of short-sightedness, right? Because the law concentrated on just the street facade. Go 17 years later to 1997.
Right.
There were 2 floors of a brick building collapse on Madison Avenue, 34th and 33rd floor. They fell onto the adjacent building and spilled over to Madison Avenue, and Madison Avenue was closed for a few weeks, and then the sidewalk was erected over Madison Avenue. And this was because the law only looked at the street facades and not at the
perimeter,
rear facades. So this made this into Local Law 11 of 98, that now mandated that all facades be inspected. And from Local Law 10, there was a 5-year cycle. In other words, every 5 years,
Yep. You were
the building
mandated to put it in,
would
and
have
if you
to
had
be
repairs,
inspected.
you were mandated to do the repairs in a certain amount of time. And if you didn't do the repairs, you were violated. The building was flagged, and then, unfortunately, if you do have a tragedy, that owner didn't do what the law says he should have done or she should have done. So it has a lot of weight.
Unfortunately, back in the day, times of Local Law 10, when you had an unsafe building, it was enough that you erected a sidewalk shed.
And you were good.
And you were good. So we've had cases that some buildings had a sidewalk shed in front of them
For 20
for
years.
years.
Yeah, 20.
For years.
Yeah, there was that, and that's part of which we're going to talk a little bit about later, which Eric Adams had implemented, that he wants
Get
the
sheds down.
Yeah, get sheds down, and we redesigned sheds so they're a little more appealing than the old ones we used to have. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. So here we are. We're at Local Law 11 now. Technology's changed too, right, Matthew? Back in the day, I remember going to job sites where there was a scaffold up, and the engineer was on the scaffold doing the inspections. Now we use drones, we use photography, we use infrared. There is, the technology's come a long way for you to see it. It may look good from the outside, but there may be a lot of stuff going on behind the cavity that's very serious. And I think technology's helped that too. Can you tell us a little bit about how the inspection of these facades has changed?
Sure. So technology is great, but technology, at least at the current stage, is not a replacement for humans.
Of course.
It's very important that the inspector touches the facades and sounds the facade, because a lot of times some things that looks good when you top it,
Yeah, it's hollow.
it's hollow. And this actually was the case when Erica Tishman got killed. The building that she was working under was filed safe just a few months prior. And at the time, it was enough for you to inspect one drop, one portion of the facade, and based on this inspection, file the report. What changed after Erica was now the inspection was mandated no less than every 60 feet of the facade. And in addition to this, on what's called cavity brick buildings, the engineer had to establish that the brick dies were holding the face brick
Right,
on the
face brick
cavity
with-
construction.
Right, because if they were rotted behind it, that's where they.
That's
they
where
pull away from
where the full walls fail.
Right.
So it really changed the inspection program from a visual and touch inspection to, in many cases, probing the facade
Right.
to establish whether the brick dies were as the code prescribes them to be.
Well, first of all, and if they actually put them in properly, were they, it's one thing to assume.
Or
that
if they put them in to begin with.
Right. So it's one thing I was just about to say, it's one thing to assume that his brick
Right.
dies, and there's something else when you open the cavity that, so probes have, so now we're meshing a whole bunch of things. We're meshing technology. We still have human, inspections, right? So it keeps evolving, and these things have a price.
Correct.
Because these inspections are not cheap. This is not something where you go and take some binoculars and you look up at the facade and go, hey, everything looks pretty good. Now we got to rig it. Now we got to possibly put a shed up to get up there, open up, take some bricks out, look inside the wall, test this, do this, send that. So it's become a pretty intense process.
Right. So it's always been that the inspection had to be up close, but you could and you can still rig a scaffold for inspection without the sidewalk shed, providing you're not doing the work. There's no tools on the
Right.
scaffold.
Just for the visual.
Just for the visual. Recently, rope access involved and became one of the, I guess, leading ways to inspect facades. So we still do it from scaffolds. A lot of times we will do it from a bucket truck. So a vehicle comes in and lifts us to the place of inspection. And rope scaffold. Following Erica's death, a QEWI, which is Qualified Exterior Wall Inspector, was established as a requirement for the person looking at the facade.
So they registered the inspectors, so it couldn't just be anybody.
Correct.
Unlike a parapet.
Unlike a parapet.
Right. So like a parapet, it's pretty much anybody who has any kind of any masonry kind of background is pretty much allowed
Right.
to do
The
it.
building super, the
Right.
contractor, it can be an engineer or an architect. But this is also, I guess, required by real life scenarios, right? So when we look at the local law, only buildings that are 6 stories tall or taller are subject to the local law filings. Right now, FISP filings every 5 years. And there's about 15,000 buildings that fall under that category.
Right.
And
if
they're broken.
Right. But if they change it a little bit, the number jumps up, I'm sure.
So if they lowered it by 1 floor to 5 stories, guess how many buildings we would have?
I don't know. I would say it has to at least double.
170,000.
Holy moly, that's 10 times.
More than tenfold. And buildings with parapets, which require parapet inspections, there's about 500,000 buildings like
I was
this.
just going to say it's got to be a hit.
So even if we wanted to take the law from 6 to 5 stories, now it would mean that we don't have enough people both to inspect it and enforce.
And not only to inspect it and enforce it, but if you're required to file it with the city and the city needs to review it, they need capacity. And
Right.
and that's been, in all fairness, that's been an issue across the board, because there are a lot of really great laws. There's a lot of really great things that the city requires, but the review process and the acceptance process, Matthew, just slows things down. I mean, an emergency repair. We just had a job. It was a good client of ours who had a leaning chimney. It takes days. It's not hours. There should be a process where within a few hours you should be able to get up on a scaffold and do what you need to do to tie it back and do whatever you need to do. And everyone's calling the office. Well, do we need a permit for this? What do we do? And I'm like, no, just do. You need to do it
Right.
before you hurt somebody.
But the DOB has emergency procedures in place, so
Yes.
if there's real danger, there's no problem of going in
Right, you
immediately.
have a few days to make, and then they'll come back and make sure that at least you shored it up and it's protected.
Right.
So, what is obviously serving on many organizations in the restoration facade envelope world? What do you think the likelihood is that they're going to drop it to 5 stories? Because I know you've been on.
I don't think I so.
Well, tell us just for a minute. Go back a second. I know that you had said to me when we were having lunch together that you're actually, if I'm not mistaken, you served for the building department to be part of them making these decisions, like as a subject matter expert. Is that correct?
So in 2013, really prompted by the upcoming change in the building code, special riggers. So the Department of Buildings, New York City Department of Buildings, issues licenses that are required for certain work.
Right. And so riggers are one.
One of those licenses is a special rigger license. And up until 2013, riggers license had no voice. They had no organization. And there were some changes planned in the 2014 code update, which were worrisome. So we opened up an organization, a nonprofit organization called New York City Special Riggers Association, to have a voice in events like this,
And be
like
able
the 2000.
to voice your opinion about the proposed laws. And I think that was a brilliant move. Brilliant.
So I was one of the 6 founding members of the organization, and I served as a vice president until 2019.
Kudos to you.
I still sit on the DOB committee, and the Special Riggers meets with DOB every quarter to discuss any current issues we might have.
Or they may have.
Or
both
they
ways.
may have, or both.
Right.
Probably one of the bigger ones was the elimination of standoff brackets. You can suspend the scaffold on outriggers where you need to bring the equipment to the roof, stage your bench work, put the outrigger out, and you're away from the facade. The scaffold goes up and down. You can also, providing that you have healthy parapet wall, you can put what's called a C-hook, and all of the bench work disappears. You have a C-hook, you have a tie-back, and that's how the scaffold works. However, the C-hook has the wire rope of the scaffold very close to the facade. So if you have any ledges, then you can't use it.
Because you're going to rub it.
There was a shortcut, if you will, where people put a piece of what called a standoff bracket to move the hook away from the wall.
Right.
However, this was introducing an undesired force onto the hook, and they actually were a few accidents, and one unfortunately was fatal. So SRA was in discussions with DOB, and we all agreed that those had to be eliminated because there was no way to make sure that there was a safe way to do it.
See, and you see, that's where I applaud your organization, I say yours, you being part of it, and the building department, to work with the contractors and say, look, we recognize that this is a problem. You see it, we see it. we need to do something about this. We can't just look the other way. And to me, I appreciate that the building department is working with your organization, because I think that's really critical. I think for too long, like you said, all those years from 1980 to 2013, there was nobody had a voice from the riggers side. Just here we go again. It seems like you think of it, you think of it and you go, oh my God, how could that possibly be? But hindsight, that's the way things worked. They just didn't ask the people that were on the scaffold every day what they thought.
We look at it the same way. We can't believe, right, that years back we didn't have this dialogue we have right now.
Exactly. But that's how organizations, that's how people that have that's my new word that I've caught on to in my elder years, is there still are pioneers. The Riggers Association was a pioneer, and you don't think of it that way, but you were. The same way that even code consultants, we became pioneers by going to the building department and saying, listen, you should hear us. We read this every day. We're in it every single day. We should be able to tell you what we think. And I think the city... And I think Eric Adams did a really great job with that through the City of Yes, that he put all of this stuff out, but he asked for the industries to give them input, and I think that's fabulous. I really do. I think that's the way to move forward.
Unfortunately, building department gets a bad rap. People see them as inspectors who come in to write violations, and it's only bad. The people, first of all, the building department enforces the law.
That's right. That's their job.
That's their job. The laws are enacted by New York City Council.
Right.
And then once the laws are passed and signed by the mayor, the Department of Buildings must enforce them. They don't have a choice to enforce or not enforce.
Right.
People at the building department are educated, knowledgeable, fully versed in the code, and so are the inspectors. So when they come to your building, they're doing their job, and their job is to make sure that the building comply.
Correct. And I think that part of that is knowing your company and you being the president of it, you being in an industry for 40 years like our firm, we just passed our 40th year. I know the way you operate. I know the way you keep your logs. I know the details that you created when you did my work. I know how clean the site was. I pass your sites in Manhattan, and I give very few accolades, Matthew, but I know how you. So for you to take that approach, you get it. You get it. This is the law. They're paying us to do this work. We need to do the work, and we need to comply with the law. So when an inspector approaches you, there's a level of confidence that, hey, we're doing the right thing. I don't have to worry. Yes, sometimes do we make a mistake? Of course, everybody does. Maybe the guy forgot something. Maybe this morning the guy jumped on the scaffold and he thought he had his hook with him, but he forgot it. But your team is going to say, hey, you don't have your hook. You got to go back. What are you doing? Right? But I think that is not, the perception is that they're here to break my shoes. They're here to give me a violation. No, they're here to make sure that nobody dies on my job site and nobody dies on the street. And that's where this conversation all started.
And by the way, when you look at the record, right? And when you look up at the old days in the 80s and 90s, it was a wild, wild west.
Yeah.
So the DOB and the changing regulations cleaned up and improved the record, the safety record, in an enormous way.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit about, at the end of every show, we're going to wrap it up in a few minutes, but to give you just something that I found quite funny is the other day I went to a project for Consigli, and they had asked me to come to the job site. And I haven't been to a job site in a long time. So, I woke up early, was in Manhattan. I went, I got a cup of coffee. I went to the job site, assuming, like I always had for my whole career. I get there, I walk around, I can't get in. There's gates with codes. It's like, there's no more gate where you just walk in. And there's a phone number. Call this number. I call the number. I say, hi, I'm Sisto Martello. I'm here from Design 2147 for a C of O meeting. I'm supposed to meet on the 11th floor. He says, okay, I'll be right down. He goes, do you have a hard hat? Do you have goggles? Do you have your vest? I said, no. He says, okay, we'll supply you. In the 80s, you used to just walk in. There was no security. Anybody could just walk in. A stranger could be lost thinking that they're in it. So those type of things have evolved, Matthew. So as we go forward, we understand that these laws are there for a reason. There's 24-hour security.
But let me give you some background on this. It's true that the sites, for the most part, used to be open and you could get in. So safety concerns is one reason to keep the site closed. But more importantly, New York State is the only state in the nation who has the labor law 240, 241.
I knew you were going to go there.
Which makes the owner of the building, owner of the construction site, owner of the GC, fully liable for any accident that's on site. Absolute liability. So there is no competitive negligence on behalf of the employee. This causes many problems. One is that a lot of insurance companies pulled out of New York State.
Yes.
There's just a handful left. The ones that are left wants to make sure that they hire safe contractors. The premiums are very high.
Crazy.
Which in turn leads some contractors to buy cheaper insurance. Usually they can afford it. And the exclusions on the policy simply do not provide the coverage. And if that happens, then it goes into the building's insurance, and the building insurance has to pay. So this became a real problem. In addition to this, there's been reports of staged accidents.
Sure.
Where people enter construction site and stage an accident. So the law, which protects the worker, now is being abused.
Right.
Allegedly.
Right.
To the benefit of...
We did a good friend of mine, Matthew Cotter from Accusure, he came on and he only represents contractors and subs, and we had a very lengthy conversation about this. It's good in one way and it's tough in another way.
My old insurance company, Tradesmen, sued a bunch of lawyers and doctors claiming that they created insurance mills to take advantage of either real accidents or stage accidents to profit from it.
Yeah, and then you always see those ads on TV about insurance fraud because
buses, T-shirts,
everything. So Matthew, towards the end of every show, we always talk about. My guests always give me a subjective opinion. A good friend of mine, Andrew Peters, always says he's in the estimating world. He says, the rear view mirror is this big, but the windshield is that big. We always want to look forward. We don't want to look back. What do you think the next changes with the facade inspection program is going to be over the next few years? What do you think the city is going to change, if anything?
So the city has already enacted a new law pertaining to facades in New York City, which will come into effect in the next cycle, in cycle 11, which is 2030 and beyond. And one of the goals of the change in regulation was to take sheds down. So following the program of 2025 of Get Sheds Down, they enacted a law which would extend the cycle from 5 to 6 years. Reportedly, the 5-year cycle was established without a scientific look at the
Right,
problem.
but now they have the data from all the years that they've been doing it.
Now they have the data. They also, in 2021, they introduced Local Law 196, which Local Law 196 trained the workers. Local Law 126 is the garages, and the garages
Yep.
from the get-go were established to be 6 years, in the 6-year cycle. So they're bringing the facades to a 6-year, which is the most frequent, all the way to 12 years. So depending on the construction of the building, the age of the building, the shape of the building, the cycle will fall anywhere between 6 and 12 years, starting in 2030.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Matthew, it was an absolute pleasure. The good news is you have so much knowledge that we're actually going to film part 2 to this. So looking forward to having you back. Thank you for coming in. And it's
Thank you for having me.
You're definitely a subject matter expert in the facade world. So I appreciate it. Thank you.